I would hope that we could settle this out of court without having to go through the judicial process and the cost to the city that would entail. So my first response to you is to get an out-of-court settlement, to do the right thing. If the evidence reveals that people were unjustly fined and that that was an act that should not have been taken, I think that there's history in the city having changed or adjusted penalties and made reimbursements in the past. I have to tell you, over the last 10 years that I've been monitoring city council activities, we've discussed, and I say we, meaning the city, has discussed the issue of overseeing some of the codes and ordinances. They've never got around to it. It's one of those things they never can get to. There's no doubt that there's codes that have to be taken off the books. They're just not needed, or they're inappropriate, and they're just unenforceable. So yes, I think that's absolutely essential that we do that. And you need somebody on the council that's going to stand up and do it. Selective enforcement takes place. There's no doubt about it. And why is this allowed to take place? It's because we tolerate that type of behavior from the ones we've already elected. Because we have a tendency, and some of our elected officials will be very vocal about it, well, you're just destroying or you're tearing down. If you don't go along with us, you're being destructive. They spin it on you because they don't want anybody looking at it. Read it and say, well, we shouldn't be bringing up these things during an election. If you don't bring them up during the election, when do you bring them up? When do you clean your house? When do you get your elected officials to do the right thing if you don't want to offend them? You know, this issue of being contentious, we don't want that. But we have to be open and honest and talk about things just like you would within your own family. Some requests that when I've met with Brock Belknap, the county attorney, to look into an issue a few years back because I was thinking that perhaps it might be beneficial for the city to have districts. The city is so large that we can't get the representation that we need. An issue came up on the funding and how that was funded to fight that, and that was led by the mayor and the then council to avoid that. The idea of where the money came from and how it was placed in an agency that was a government agency and private agency, you know, it flies in the face of direct openness, and as to whether it's appropriate to be using a public agency to help our council, for example, or our city government fight having districts. In other words, they're using taxpayers' money to fight what the taxpayers are signing the petition to do. That actually happened.
And that was the mayor and the prior city council that did that?
That's correct. You know, but I presented that information to the county attorney. He looked into it and he said, what do you want to do? And I told him quite clearly, we're not here to seek prosecution to say that this individual committed a crime because we're looking at a borderline issue. But the idea is to fix it so that doesn't happen. And it was fixed as a result of that. And we did it without having to go to court. And I think that's good. The mayor had previously told me that as long as he was in office, there would never be districts. And he absolutely, that was all there was to it. And so yeah, I know they circle the wagons on me. I've been beat up quite a bit by you know, city government in a lot of ways because it acts as a political machine. And so that it was placed on the ballot and it was voted on it, but during that process they needed some money to fight that. And I know, you know, that a trucking company in town was the owner supported that financially. And I believe that's the one. And that money was then put into this agency that's private and government, and they used the money from there to have the necessary.
Oh, so you're saying the mayor actually used public funds to stop that?
Well, I'm just saying that if it's in a public agency that we contribute to, and that agency participates in that process by allowing their bank account to be used to draw that money out, we don't know. That's the problem.
But ultimately, from the use of those public funds, they helped to defeat the
well,
what was
no,
on the ballot?
it was the funds that were contributed by this trucking company that helped defeat it, because, you know, it amounted to about $8,000, if I recall right. And, of course, that entails the usage of the assets of this agency. So, and that's being paid for by the public, so
what was the agency the funds were placed in to then go ahead and help defeat the ordinance?
Well, that was the Washington County Economic Council that does, you know, for the benefit of bringing in industry into the city.
Why would they not want the districts? Why would they go to such?
Because the city would lose control. You know, they have 5 councilmen that they handpick pretty much. I can tell you, without any doubt in my mind, after 10 years of doing this, and this may not help me to get elected, but I've never been in this thing just to win an election. I've been in these races all these years to make effective change and to get items squared away that needed to be squared away, just like the code enforcement. And that's what I've been fighting, and then I've been fighting City Hall to do that.
So you want to stop the self-dealing and the appearance of corruption.
Absolutely.
And the lack of transparency, the same things that we're addressing at Case.
Absolutely. And I'm not taking sides with what you're trying to do or with what the city's trying to do. But when I went to see the mayor to discuss this, he gave me about 2 minutes. He always says he's open. He gave me 2 minutes, and what he basically says, go see the department head. He didn't want to talk to me. He never did talk to me about it. And so I went to see the department head, and he told me if I didn't like it, sue the city.
So we've been doing this for 2 months, but you've been fighting it for 10 years.
That's correct. Well, as we just discussed, one of the misconceptions has been is how they spin these things, because if you dare to bring them up, now you're the one destroying or being counterproductive. And that's the exact opposite. City Hall has been involved in politics. City employees have been allowed to participate right from the top down in violation of their own policy and procedures. You know, you're not supposed to do this if you're a city employee on city time. And it's just little stuff like that. When you add it up, and you add up all these small things, you know, it gets to be a picture of the character of those who are really guiding and steering the ship here. But we don't want to cast aspersions on them, because, you know, after all, we go to church with them. They're in our stake, or in our wards, and it's even worse than that. We went to school with them, and we can wave the Dixie flag and sing the song, and that makes everything okay, and we can turn our heads and look away and feel good about it. Well, I don't believe that that's how we should do business. I think when you see something wrong, you make it right. Every time I've run, and people say, how can we run so often? I didn't run just against one council, the opponent. I was running against the political machine in the City Hall. And so, yeah, it's taken its toll, and it's cost me a lot of money.
The feel I have from the amount of comments, and we have got a lot of private comments. You have the public officials, but there is a lot of concern about the non-elected officials over at city government, kind of running the show and pushing things through. Is that your feel in 10 years down there that's what's going on?
Well, it's happened. There's no question about it. You know, and I'll give you an example. There's some people. The chamber is very active in local politics. They have their sunshine group, goes to all these things. And there's been some of those have been very, very active in campaigning for the mayor over the years, and for council people. And they've been very active in some of the things they've said. Now, one of those individuals happens to now be on the planning commission. She also happens to be the mother of the assistant to the city manager. I think that there's a potential conflict of interest there. And whether, you know, she has a right to participate and to express herself politically, but when her son sits as the assistant to the city manager, and he has a close relationship with his mother, I would expect, you have to ask, why would the mayor appoint his mother? What are her qualifications? Where's the discussion that took place? Because I know that it might be because she's supported him all these years and campaigned for him. Is that a tantamount to a payoff? You know, is this how we do business? I'm talking to you knowing that this can impact my ever getting elected. But there again, it's not the issue of getting elected, it's the idea of cleaning house. because we're talking Fourth Amendment rights, violations thereof, and now we're talking First Amendment rights. These guys are out of control.
You used a phrase there, it's time to clean house. Is that what you think needs to happen, is we need to clean house over there?
I think we need to start from the top. I think it's time that we have a new mayor, and I think it's time that we have employees comply with all of the policies, procedures within the city that prohibit them from being involved politically when they're while during their course of employment. That is wrong, and it's not fair to everyone else, and those things need to be cleaned up. And that's going to impact, because that comes right from your city manager. If your city manager's not doing his job, because he does a good job on so many areas, but there's some areas that have gotten lax in. And when you've been a city manager for 38 years, and the mayor's been there for 30 years, they have developed a feeling of proprietorship. They feel they own the city. It's theirs to do with what they want, when they want, and they can take the money from one fund to spend it on another, on their pet projects, without open and complete discussion with the public at large on some of these very, very important issues. That's what I'm saying needs to be cleaned up. Do you know that when they come out, this actually happened. Have a city employee comes out and he says, and I asked him to sign the petition. This is not to say yes or no, just to put it on the ballot. And the city employee says, "I can't, Ed, I'm afraid I'll lose my job." What drives me is, we're talking government issues. I'm not talking in your personal life, how you conduct yourself,
Right.
Although that can be looked at. I'm talking about just government and how the government performs. And when I look at those things, it's the way you're raised. You've seen my American flag out in front of the house.
Right.
Because I believe, and I was taught that when you're an American, regardless of what color you are or where you came from, you're as good as anybody else, and you should be treated equally and fairly. And I've been taught that we have a constitution. The only reason this election's getting out with a lot of this information is because now we have the internet, we have Facebook. Now we can get these things out that couldn't come out before. I've even gone to businesses, wanted to put my sign out in front of their business, and they said, "No, Ed, can't do that, I don't want the mayor mad at me." When you're pushed around, I believe Americans stand up for themselves. I believe Americans stand up for the little guy and support the ones who are weaker and can't do it. You're destructive. You're really rocking the boat here. You shouldn't be doing that, because these guys are good guys. After all, they were born and bred here, and they go to church here. Well, that's not all that's involved in being a good American and being a good citizen. When I first started out, every issue that came up, all five voted in the same way, because they had this agreement. Everything,
Right.
we act in unison. The mayor comes out a few years back and he said, "I don't want any enforcement of parking on trucks in a certain area." Where does he get the authority to say that you can violate the law? Either you take the statute off the books, which we talked about earlier, or you enforce the law. But you can't say you have permission to violate the law because of this, this, or that. The mayor and the city manager play hardball when it comes to losing authority. And that's why when this last issue, when the mayor put forth that we should give the city manager a 4% raise in salary, because he hadn't had a raise for so long, and city employees aren't getting those same raises, you have to ask yourself, what is going on? Really, what are we doing here? It's just simply about doing the right thing, being respectful, setting priorities that allow you to spend the city funds and city money where the citizens want it spent, not where a handful of individuals want it.